Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, a show where we review movies and TV shows and talk about what we have been doing. Been a little bit, but we're back again, and it's going to be a good one. Niles, how have you been the last couple weeks?
Good, busy. There's always stuff to do. I feel like I say that every episode, but that is life, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, it's been good lately. We got some friends in town that we haven't seen in a while, and got to spend some good quality time with them. Going around to Meow Wolf and checking out some cool stuff in
Yeah.
Denver. There's lots of always interesting little spots to check out, and always just good to catch up with folks as well. How about you, Dylan? How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good as well. Like you said, had some company in town, and for audience members who don't understand why our episodes are sometimes late, it's because we both have jobs,
Yay!
and they take up a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and maybe we'll talk about Meow Wolf a little bit in our in a later section of our show because I think that was a really interesting experience that I'd never done before. So that was really cool, and it was nice to see all of our friends, as it always is. But that's not why you're here, audience
No.
member. You're here for a review of a TV show. And this week we are talking about True Detective. We'll do a couple minutes non-spoilers, and then we'll go full spoilers for the season. So, yeah, True Detective Night Country is the fourth installment in the acclaimed anthology series and stars Jodie Foster, Callie Reese, Fenn Bennett, Isabella LeBlanc, John Hawkes, and Christopher Eccleston. This new season follows Detective Liz Danvers and Alaska State Trooper Evangeline Navarro as they navigate their personal relationships and investigate the suspicious deaths of a group of scientists and how those deaths may be connected to a case from their past, all during the long Alaskan winter that is at night.
Yeah.
Niles, what are your initial thoughts on True Detective Night Country?
Well, I think let's set some context before we share our initial thoughts so people understand our familiarity with the series too. You introduced me to True Detective several years ago, back when you were in college, and so I've seen the first season. We just
10 years
rewatched
ago
it.
now.
Yeah, the original show. But yeah, it's been a while since we've seen that. But my partner and I, we rewatched it. I kind of did a half rewatch, so I wasn't watching or paying entire attention to it, but got those events more fresh in my brain, which is nice. But yeah, did not even touch season 2.
Okay.
We got 3 episodes into season 3 before I lost interest in it. So, it was, yeah, it just didn't grab me. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's just because it was just like one episode at a time, the release schedule and stuff. And I feel like with detective and crime shows, you really do need to have all the information. You need to remember it very clearly, or else you're just going to lose interest. And when it's released one episode at a time and you're not very interested in the case, it can be easy to get lost. That's why I didn't finish it. Maybe one day I'll go back and finish season 3. But I think season 4 was more or less a return to form for this intellectual property, in my opinion. I think the middle section of the season, like episode 3, 4, they kind of drag a little bit, and it's kind of the clunkiest part of the story, I think. But maybe that's kind of the case with a lot of detective shows too. But season 1, it felt like lightning in a bottle. It was so good. It was like the characters drove that show. Like Russ Cole is still just like one of my top, like probably 10, 20 characters of all time. I just think he's so fucking awesome. He's so amazing. And it's so hard to recapture that magic. And I think season 4, they did a pretty good job of getting close to that goal, in my opinion. And yeah, I thought it was super cool. This Night Country season, I feel like mysticism and supernatural phenomena, they're always kind of adjacent to the series. They're loose in there. There's some things that are unexplained, like season 1, I think, with the whole kind of backwoods country redneck
The Yellow
vibe,
King, all that stuff.
Yeah, with the spiral and this kind of cult thing going on. It's really weird. And you're like, what's going on here? There's got to be something supernatural. And I think Night Country embodies that here really strongly, too. I really like the aesthetics, the atmosphere, the overall vibe, and it's such a cool idea to like set a TV show about crime and detective work in Alaska during this long stretch of time when there's no sun. It's like that. Why have I never seen a show like this before? You know?
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Dylan? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll give some background on where I stand with the series as well. So I found season 1 as it was airing week to week. It was our freshman year of college, and a buddy of mine and I watched it all. I remember this was back before HBO figured out how to do their servers properly. So every time there was a big episode, the app would crash. So it took us like 3.5 hours to watch the True Detective season 1 finale, and it was so worth it because that season, I think, is still one of the best things that's ever been on television. I watched season 2 as well. I thought it was a significant step down from season 1, although I did like a lot of the characters and performances, and I still think it's a pretty solid season of TV. It's just coming off of one of the best things I'd ever watched. It did not match that high bar, and because of that, and just because of the amount of time that had passed, I never watched season 3. I've been meaning to go back to it for a long time, and I just always forget. But I would like to check it out. But I was really excited for this. The idea of setting it in this long night of the Alaskan winter, I thought was really intriguing, and I will say that definitely paid off. I think the atmosphere gave a great sense of eeriness and like disorientation to the whole season, which I think really plays into the True Detective vibe.
Yeah.
And I also had some moments throughout the season that made my skin crawl a little bit. I thought there were a lot of creepy things going on, and I liked that. I think that's important. And like I enjoyed watching it and looked forward to it each week, but I do think it was done a disservice by being labeled as a season of True Detective, because one, you're going to invite that comparison to season 1, which nothing is going to hold up to, and two, as I'll talk about more in spoilers, I almost think this is too different in identity to really feel like True Detective, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Still good. It's just the name of the show invites a certain expectation, as I've seen a lot of people say, and I don't think this show was necessarily interested in delivering on some of those. So.
No, that's fair. Yeah. Well, I think the show True Detective as like an intellectual property, I think it's defined by this this premise of diving deep into the complicated personal and professional lives of these very messy detectives, these very messy law enforcement professionals. And season 1, like we've been saying, it's really hard to beat that. And it's such a character driven story too. You have like Russ Cole, who's this like totally out there weirdo who just like no one respects within the department. He's just like so outlandish. Like he comes up with the strangest theories, and like he speaks in like limericks. He's like such a weirdo. And then you have Woody Harrelson's character Marty. And he's and he's just like a total piece of shit in all respects.
He's like your straight-edged cop, except he is a serial cheater.
Yes, exactly. Like people respect him, but he's a scumbag. And so I kind of get what we were coming from there, Dylan. Like this season 4 here, it doesn't. You do have these two lead detectives played by Jodie Foster and Callie Rez. And they do a great job, and it's still a character-driven show, and these leads are complicated, which we'll get into in just a second, but it is kind of more spread out. There's more characters in play here that get more screen time than you would say in the first season, so it does have a little bit of a different feel, but you do have some similar motifs throughout.
Yeah, and I will also say this is the first season of True Detective not made by the original creator, Nick Pizzolatto, I think is how you say his last name. So that is worth noting. Also, he's been kind of a sack of shit about this season on social media, just saying like really negative and petty shit about it. I don't know if he was forced out by HBO. If he was, that's awful. But like, I don't know. You don't need to tear down other artists' work as it's coming out. And the showrunner of this show handled that with a lot more tact and grace than he did.
That's good.
So that always sucks to see, because it's like do I put this on the same level as season 1? No, of course not. But I don't want this to be just like a comparison to season 1 either. The show does stand on its own. That is the nice thing about it being an anthology. And even if you hate this, even if you hated Night Country, season 1 is untouched. It is still there. You can still fucking watch it. Like, I saw someone say, because there's been a lot of negative backlash this season online, and a lot of it is like your usual suspects who are just like upset that it's about women. But someone was like, Night Country totally tarnishes the legacy of True Detective season 1. It's like, nah, man, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It doesn't touch it at all. Like, you're dumb if you think that. You're an unintelligent person if you believe that.
Yeah, seriously. Like, it's an anthology series. Like, it's untouched. You know, like you can say that about so many different series too. Of like, season 4 of Fargo was terrible. It ruined the first season. It's like, no, that doesn't make any sense because they're two separate stories entirely.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah.
I would say, I'm still positive on the season, and I enjoyed it. But I acknowledge that it wasn't as good as the first, and there's some shortcomings and some things that I think could have been better.
Yes, I would say it does not all quite click into place to the degree that I would like it, but I would recommend it for the performances, the atmosphere, and just the general look of the show itself. I thought it was very well done. So do you want to hop into spoilers at this point and just get going?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's dive a little bit deeper into this show. And why don't we start by talking about the leads? Our two leads here, Jodie Foster as Liz Danvers and Kelly Rez as Evangeline Navarro.
Yes.
What were your thoughts on their performances?
I thought they were both really good, and I liked the sort of pretty hostile relationship they have towards each other, especially at the start. And I also liked the element that Navarro is not a detective anymore. She's a state trooper now. Something happened in their past that causes her to no longer be a detective. And so that was another little element of mystery that was kind of fun. It's like, okay, what happened that got them to this point? Because like in the other two seasons that I'd seen, the story more or less starts with the detectives getting to know each other or meeting for the first time. And so this was different. They had a long history that we get to learn about over the course of the season. But yeah, what did you think about them?
Yeah, I thought they gave great performances, both of them. You know, Jodie's fantastic as always, and Callie, you know, she did great. I don't know her from anything else, but I thought she did a fantastic job. And
she was a fighter, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just, I checked her IMDb. She only has like 2 credits before this. So it seems like she's just now transitioning into acting from fighting.
Yeah. And I think that does kind of come across a little bit. I think when you have them side by side and they're kind of sharing a scene, you know, I think Jodie did have, or she's obviously stronger as an actor than Callie is, and that just comes from experience. But you know, I think that they both did great. They embodied the roles very well, and they did a great job of conveying these very strong emotions. And they're both badasses in their own rights too. You know, I felt that if I encountered either one of these women like out in the wild, I would be pretty intimidated. Honestly, they're very like powerful. They have this commanding presence about them, and I thought that came through very strongly here. And I'd also say that, you know, the characters, they felt very well written. Like they had thought through the backstories for them very clearly. I just think that the show could have been a little bit better about showing some of that history in greater detail for us. But you know, both of these characters, to me, they felt that they were both simultaneously overburdened by responsibilities and their past guilt and trauma, which is true for or fitting for the True Detective series as a whole. You know, Navarro, she's grappling with her sister's mental illness and trying to help her out, but then she eventually commits suicide, and that's on top of the frustrations of her job and the trauma of her work and the things that she's done in the past. They keep going back to the Wheeler case, which was just this very trauma-inducing event that they both shared. And Navarro's combative as always, I think, but I think as the series goes on, she does lean on that as a defense mechanism or a crutch time and time again. And it's just because she doesn't really know sometimes how to properly deal with this trauma, how to like process it and work through it.
And she does lash out violently several times throughout the show. And I will say that is something that I think it's just my perspective on the police and policing has changed a lot in the 10 years since I've since season 1. And so I think I was more bothered when Navarro and Liz Danvers do like cross the line and kill people they shouldn't or beat the shit out of suspects than I was when Marty and Rust did similar things way back in the day, because I now have a greater understanding of how corrupt and violent police most of the time are. So I don't think this is a critique of the show itself. It's just a difference in my understanding of the nature of policing. Because, like, Navarro was, like, beating the shit out of that suspect at the end. I'm like, yo, you can't do that. That's really bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or there's like one scene where she just like really mad. I can't remember exactly what she's mad about, but she sees that guy from like the first episode that she arrested and stuff for like abusing his wife, and she just goes up and just gets in a fight with him because she's mad and she doesn't know where to direct that anger. And it's like, yeah, if a cop did that today, they could do it and maybe get away with it, but you know,
they probably. I mean, she could have shot him and gotten away with it. And
probably,
yeah. And that did make me very uncomfortable watching it, because I'm like, oh God, it's too real. But I understand. Someone on Twitter said it best. Like, I understand now that movie cops are like elves or fairies. They're fantasy creatures that only appear in our fiction, and I can enjoy them in that way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the series has always been kind of truthful to the nature of what cops can do, what detectives can do, and how they can manipulate the laws in their favor. But we'll get into that later. You know, and I also thought that Danvers, she was a very powerful character too. You know, she was struggling emotionally to connect with her stepdaughter Leah and balance her work as a police chief as well as trying to be like a stepmom. And you know, she's also carrying a lot of this emotional weight from the deaths of her husband and her son Holden, and the past work that she's done with Navarro to a certain extent. But you know, I think that they were both very complex characters, and it was tough to peel back the layers of them. I wish that they explored that a little bit more, or at least gave us a little bit more historical context. As it just kind of felt like it wasn't
we'll talk about
consistent.
that in our like problems too, because that I have a problem with the way the show doled out its some of its revelations and information, but we'll get more into that in a little bit. But yeah, I liked their dynamic. I also liked the dynamic with Pryor, sort of the third main character almost. And this show is much more of an ensemble show about this town and its issues, rather than being so focused on the detectives themselves and the case. Like elements like Pryor's marriage and his relationship with his dad and the mining operation and all that are things that would have like been present in the first couple seasons, but would not have been given as much screen time, I don't think, as those seasons were very much about the psychology of the detectives and like their relationships specifically, not the relationships of the other people in their lives. And that is something that I felt made this show distinct from the other seasons I've seen, is that it is more of this ensemble thing. And I think that is something that didn't match up with people's expectations for True Detective as a series. Yeah. Not a bad thing, just a different thing. Because I actually did find a lot of the interpersonal relationships between the ensemble cast like pretty well written. Pryor trying to balance his relationship with his wife, with his job, and his over-demanding boss, and also his dynamic with his dad, and he's just not really able to find that balance throughout the show.
Yeah.
And it seems like they probably had their kid accidentally, and they're just trying to make it work as best as possible, right? Because she's trying to go to school. They're pretty young looking. So,
exactly.
Yeah. And then also her contentious relationship with Leah, her adopted daughter, stepdaughter. I don't know. It's not really clear. But
it is a little unclear there. Yeah, I had to kind of Google around because they didn't make that very obvious to the audience here. Because like for a while too, I was like confused about whether she was like related by blood or not.
What did you find?
What I just found online was just that she's her stepdaughter, and the Liz's husband and their son Holden, they died in like a car crash or something
Yeah.
like that. Like I don't
Yeah.
remember all the details, but like that stuff, maybe it was mentioned really quickly, but yeah, it wasn't clearly communicated to me. But I think that would have, if that was a little bit more on the nose, it
Mm-hmm.
would have added another element to there. But yeah, you're right. This ensemble cast is it is distinct for this season, and it makes sense when you understand how the crime was committed at the end. In the finale, we get a lot of details that it was really
That's true.
The community came together and murdered these people.
It's like the Murder on the Orient Express ending. It's like, who's the killer? It was everyone together.
Everybody did it, and that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought because the ensemble nature, it makes more sense when you get to the ending there. Like if
That's
we
true.
did not get any context for like Pryor's relationships or like all these other dynamics within the town, and we got that ending, I would have been so pissed.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make it feel more earned, even though those characters specifically aren't given as much of the limelight or whatever. They're present enough to where it makes sense that it was them. I also enjoyed Navarro's dynamic with Rose Cooper, the old lady who's played by the actress who plays Marva Andor in Andor.
She's great. I love her. She's such a good actress.
Yeah, and she's, I guess, Rust Cole's mom, because she talks about her husband, Travis Cole, coming as a ghost to like visit her.
Right.
I mean, maybe he remarried and she's not related to Rust, but that was one of the season 1 callbacks or references.
Right.
That I thought that was fine, because it's like that's one of the things that people are like, wow, they're so pathetic trying to connect to season 1. It's like, this is a blink and you'll miss it cameo of a dead guy. Like it doesn't matter. It's
like if she is related to Rust Cole, that's awesome. I'm 100% on board because she has that kind of vibe there.
Yeah.
Of this wisdom and mysticism with her too. Yeah, I think one of the relationships that I wish we had a little more screen time of, because we didn't get any of it, was Liz and her late husband.
Yes.
All that we get for them are like some flashbacks, and it's not even like relationship building at flashback. It's just literally Liz and her son Holden, which is fine because that's the one that she had the emotional connection with, and that was kind of her sense of like joy in life at that time. So it makes sense that he's not really in the picture, but at the same time, like, I feel like we need a little bit of something of their dynamic just so I could get some context there, but whatever.
Yeah. I agree, and I liked the element of the little polar bear with the one eye, like the little stuffed animal kept haunting her and showing up as hallucinations or something.
Yeah, all over the place.
And I thought that was interesting. I think the supernatural stuff, like, it was handled very differently in this than it was in season 1. Like, basically everything that's actually supernatural in season 1 is like Rust having visions because he was like in Narcos for such a long time and took a shitload of drugs and it fucked with his brain. And in this, it doesn't have any like explanation in rationality really for the most part. So it's either just characters are hallucinating or there is supernatural stuff out there. We'll talk about that more later on too, but that's fine. I don't need it to be the same approach. And it kind of ties into the general atmosphere of everything. Like something seems like it's out there. And I think the location and it taking place in constant night really created this like great setting for a detective story. Like the idea that you can just dispose of a body relatively easily by going to a remote enough area and cutting a hole in the ice and just like chucking them in there is pretty freaky. And also,
yeah, right.
It always being night added this sense of disorientation because the characters would just be like starting their day and having a cup of coffee, but it still feels like it's late at night at every point in time. So it kind of throws you off as a viewer because it just looks wrong. In a good way.
Right. It's kind of unnerving because you're expecting the sunlight, you're expecting routine and pattern, and the pattern is nothing. The pattern is it's always dark out, and you're
Yep.
right. The location is a fantastic idea. Because if you can just get rid of a body that easily, or you can just like throw it out in the snow, and maybe they'll find it in the spring, and by that time, it's you can't determine like the cause of death or whatever. It's like
Yep.
there's so many things that could go like that we don't think of when we think of crime dramas or when we think of true crime. You think of like,
Right.
oh, you just look for the footprints or something like that. And it's like, well, if there's a mountain of snow, you're not
Yeah,
gonna find
they're gone.
footprints. Like you're kind of shit
Exactly.
out of luck.
Yeah, and the location and it being this way, I think, was a really, and I can't speak to season 3, but it's a big return to form because I think that like spooky kind of creepy element of the unknown in these like small town places is very essential to True Detective. And I don't think season 2 really nailed that as much. It tried to by like showing a different side of the Los Angeles area, but it's like it was still LA. And it just, the concrete jungle aesthetic just didn't give me that same feeling as both this and season 1 did. So I appreciated that sort of
wow,
return.
I didn't know
that
that was in LA. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk about the case itself here in Night Country?
Yeah, I thought both the setup of the initial crime scene was really cool and creepy, just like the empty science facility where the Ferris Bueller scene with Twist and Shout is like on repeat.
Yeah.
It was really really unsettling, and also the frozen corpses themselves were just like, you see that and you're like, what the fuck happened? Like, what is going on here? And also the morbidity of just like moving them all and putting them in the ice rink for a couple episodes was darkly funny. So I really loved the setup element, for sure. I thought that set the mood perfectly. What about you?
Yeah, right. It is a very eerie case. Night Country, it feels mystical and spooky, like we were talking about with the atmosphere and everything, but the case itself is spooky because the setup for the crime, there's a severed tongue in the facility, and you have no idea how that got there. There's no one in the facility, and they haven't been there for several days. And when this all started, it was on the first day of the Night Country time period, which is like right around the holidays, if I remember right. It's like everything kind of takes place in between, like
leading up to Christmas, kind of.
Yeah, leading up to Christmas and then to New Year's. Like I think when they transition into the New Year, it's like, okay, change. Obviously it's kind of a good transitional time, but it's like there's all these kinds of weird things about it. The tongue, the timing, the fact that no one is in the facility and they find the bodies outside. They took all their clothes off and put them off to the side, so they just kind of walked out there willingly to their death, it kind of seems like. So it almost implies this sense of like spirituality or some metaphysical element that was kind of like driving them out of the facility, being like, here's how you're going to get out. It's like, you have to go. And it's very like ambiguous about who did what. Like, was there some kind of extra supernatural element at play here? Like, and I think the first scene of the show, I don't know if you clearly remember it, but it's like the transition from day to night, basically, and it's the hunter and he's hunting the caribou up there, and then the caribou sense some change and they all just run off a cliff like lemmings. And it's like, that to me screams supernatural. So then I just immediately start thinking the crime is supernatural too.
There were enough hints where it kind of made me feel like, well, there has to be something supernatural going on, because otherwise what the hell is happening here? And like there is a rational explanation to the case itself, which I appreciated. But like when we start, we're in the science facility, right? And then the one guy's like, she's awake and then starts seizing or something, and then we cut away and we don't see what happens next, and the next time we see them, they're all in the snow, like naked and freezing to death or frozen. So I liked the setup a lot. I think that was really great. I think Sorry, I almost skipped over some notes.
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think in general sometimes detective crime shows like this they can lose me a little bit. It definitely shows me why I could never be a detective in real life because like I can lose track of some case details very easily. It would be different, of course, if I was living this every single day. But when we would be watching this show one episode at a time, sometimes I'd have to turn to my partner and be like, "Now, who are they talking about again? Why are they here?" And that's just really kind of my own issue. It's not really an issue with the show. I would say the case itself is complicated, and they do dance around the truth for a long time, but they always do that in crime shows. There's always this trying to find what it is, and all that good stuff that comes with it.
Yeah. And I liked the little double twist of the researchers themselves ultimately encouraging and contributing to the pollution in the town that's causing all this harm, so that they could find that research, and they think they're doing it for the greater good, right? They think it, and it's very, I don't know, I think that's a very true to life idea that a lot of people have. It's like, oh, it's like these people will suffer, but we can figure this amazing thing out and maybe save future lives. It's like, well, you're killing babies, like you're causing stillbirths, man.
I know. There's it is this case of is it really for the greater good, and is it really worth all the harm that you're causing to all these people's lives if you can have some kind of innovation in the world, and there have been some things where we have seen progress through those means. I was just overhearing my partner, she was listening to one podcast, I think it was about the history of gynecology or something like that, and how it got started, and it was literally this guy who's doing all these experiments on slaves and doing all this stuff on people that really were his property or someone else's property, and it's that's fucked up, but it started the field of gynecology, so it's well, there was some good in it, I guess, but at the same time, you're really splitting hairs there, and these researchers in this show here, was it really worth it to do all this stuff? And
was it really about the help it could cause by doing it, or was it about them being the ones to find the answer? And was it an ego thing more than anything else?
Exactly. And it just builds upon itself, so that first there's the pollution, and that they're contributing to all these terrible health effects that's happening in the town. And then Annie K finds out about it, so they murder her. It's a collective kind of conspiracy to murder her there at the research facility. They get rid of her body, but once that information is revealed to this group of native people, it's all right, we got to get our own form of justice, because justice is not going to be served for us. We need to do something about this. Yeah,
the wheels of justice do not help the marginalized people in this country, so that's true to life as well.
Yes.
But I wish we'd gotten to know Annie K a little bit more as a character, maybe as well. They do a little bit of it because they want you to like her and care about her. But I guess the other seasons don't really do that either, so maybe that's not part of what's going on.
Yeah. I get what you're saying, though. It would have been nice to get a little bit more context about who she is, and maybe just her family in general. Spend more time with them. Kind of put more context to a character. But the unraveling conspiracy, it's fascinating, and I did appreciate that it was just, at the end of the day, this group of Native women just kidnapped the researchers and led them to their deaths. I'm like, all right. More power to you guys.
They just walked in with a bunch of fucking guns and were like, all right, we're moving.
Or the crime is happening now.
Yeah.
And I did see one or some critiques online. You could, there's whole subreddits that you can explore of just criticism about the season being incomprehensible or forgettable, that the finale did too much, and we'll get into that very shortly here. And I think that there is some validity to some of the criticisms about this season.
Yeah. And the good faith ones, because they're the bad faith ones as well, which I'm always comfortable disregarding. Them when you see them. Just there's a certain type of YouTube thumbnail that you see and you're like, I'm not going to click that. That has women with like laser eyes on it, and for some reason they put Brie Larson's face here. Why is Kathleen Kennedy on this thumbnail about True Detective? Oh, it's because these people's audience are full of idiots, and they'll click on anything with that woman's face. They'll just say her name once, and they'll be like, "That's right, it's her fault." I think very little of these individuals. But the main criticism I have is I felt like the show's reveals were a little too back heavy. Like it kind of pulls us along, and then the finale, it's like, all right, we're gonna get revelations on every element that we haven't covered so far, and like there are hints about Danvers' kid being dead. That seems like an obvious thing that's happened, and then also like something that happened with the Wheeler case, but like just as a point of comparison, in season 1, not to compare again, but like we find about Rust's dead daughter in the first episode at that dinner scene when he's drunk. Remember, he's like talking about how he's like having a hard time because it was my daughter's birthday and I remembered that and I knew I was going to have a drink, and he shows up to dinner and he's drunk, and we spend the rest of the season getting to see the different ways that trauma that we now have addressed is affecting him. And we see how like he behaves, and we know why he's behaving that way, and the drama is exploring his behavior, not so much the revelation about what happened to his kid. And like you kind of get that with Danvers, but I don't think you do quite to a degree. I think the way it's played out the best is in her relationship with Leah. She's very harsh with Leah, but out of a protective, like, maternal instinct. She's trying to keep her safe. Like, she doesn't want her involved in the mining protests because she'll get hurt, and she doesn't want to deal with that again. I get that. That's fine. But I think the negative effect of all this is that it just leaves so many threads up in the air the whole time, and they distract from the central mystery of the show because you're always thinking about all these other things. And I don't think any of the elements are poorly written, but it makes the season feel less focused than it otherwise could.
I get that, and I agree. They did kind of drip feed information a little too slowly throughout the season. I think there was honestly, like, when we got to the finale, there was a part of me that was like, oh, that's right, she did have a kid. Like, I just kind of completely forgot about it, and because, Leah is, like, her, main focus family-wise, it's like, okay, that's her family, and it just kind of drops out of your head that, like, oh, yeah, she had a son, too, and a husband, and all this other stuff, because you're more focused on the present. And so I think, I agree. I think the show would have benefited from giving a little bit more screen time to these other things going on. The people behind the scenes, the people that are trying to cover up the truth, Pryor's father, or, the other women they talk to in the car. Like, they barely get any screen time, and we don't really get to understand.
Yeah, the corporate lady, the mining company lady. Yeah.
I was just kind of like, I feel like you were introduced, and then we never get to see you again. Like,
it was interesting because, like, was she the one who Danvers had slept with her husband? Was that the same lady, or was that a different lady?
Maybe.
They were both redheads, I think. So I got confused about that. But, yeah, I one reveal I really did like was that Pryor's father was involved in the cover-up. I thought that was delivered in a really good way. And the ending of the penultimate episode, I think, was my favorite part of the show. That showdown in Danvers' house. Like, it was just so abrupt and just devastating for Pryor, who has had a hard time all season and then has to shoot his dad right after his dad kills the key witness. It was like, oh my God, fuck. Jesus.
Yeah, this is fucked now. Like, I thought that was devastating. And we'll get into that in a bit too, but that was like, I love that line that Navarro delivered where she was like, so Pryor's fucked up for life, right? It's like, he's fine. He's fucked. He's going to be grappling with this trauma forever.
Yeah. And I actually really liked his dad's as a character. I thought he was very interesting to watch. He was just such a, like, and I loved Danvers' line where she's like, your father only pretends to be stupid. Like, he's very observant. You have to understand this. And I liked that element, but I also liked how just sad he was and how kind of pathetic, like when he he got scammed thinking that he was gonna meet a wife, and it was
Yeah,
nothing.
like I feel for him where it's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I bet it's probably a little challenging in Alaska to meet like, women that
Mm-hmm.
you find attractive and they find you attractive, but
Yeah,
it's
and in a small town in the middle of nowhere, when you're an older
exactly.
guy, too. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I felt for him in that moment. I'm like, oh, poor dude, but also
mhm.
you helped cover up a murder, so
Yeah, even murderers can find love, Niles.
I shouldn't be so quick to judge.
Yeah, and I will also say, and I've alluded to this already, but I got the vibe at times that this story initially began its life as a police investigation in this small town, and that the True Detective identifiers were added on much later in the writing process to fold it into this existing property. Because, as we've talked about earlier, I think the story has pretty significantly different DNA than the
Hmm.
other True Detectives I've seen. And I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, but I just thought this season felt different when I was watching it. And
Hmm.
and like another interesting note on that same thing, like on the title card of the show, Night Country is the big text. This is Night Country, and True Detective is little. Like it's not
Yeah.
True Detective season 4. It's like Night Country, a True Detective story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the emphasis is very much on the Night Country side of things.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. Maybe they're just trying to make it very clear that this is some part of True Detective, but yeah, maybe you're onto
yeah,
something there if it was written for something else first and then
yeah. And I
adapted.
could
I
be
don't know.
wrong. I don't know, but that was just the feeling I got from it because it seemed like they were more interested in telling the detective story through the lens of this town's culture and populace rather than through like the souls of the detective characters themselves. If that makes sense.
Sure, I get you. Yeah, maybe it's just the country as a whole, this this
Mm-hmm.
this region. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good observation. One thing
Thanks.
that I did want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
today was also this manipulation of the truth. It was this thing that just
Mm-hmm.
kind of popped into my head as we were coming up with this episode, because I think that the manipulation of truth is a
Mm-hmm.
prevalent motif in the series as a whole. You look at season one, and you can see some of this um, come back here, and it's very fitting because true is in the title. We're
Yeah.
trying to get to the bottom of the truth here, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the truth is disgusting, and sometimes it's not what you want, and sometimes you can manipulate it and make it a little bit more subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in season four here, so kind of the things that I wanted to talk about with it was that the Wheeler case, it really does come front and center here in multiple episodes, where
Mm-hmm.
in which Navarro and Danvers are responding to this. They've responded to these domestic abuse calls time and time again to this one
Yep.
place, and they haven't been able to do anything about it
Mm-hmm.
because there's only so much that they can do by the book,
Yeah.
I suppose. But then one day they go by, and the male suspect killed his wife, and then out of rage, Navarro executes him.
Yeah. After seeing something.
Yeah, yeah. After seeing something, uh, so it's a terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you get the justification of why she killed him,
Yeah.
and we don't really have any sympathy for him as
Mm-hmm.
the victim here. But Danvers and Navarro, they have to frame the crime scene as a murder suicide, and that's how they report it,
Yes.
so that way it doesn't fuck up their lives. And then
Mm-hmm.
you see them do a very similar thing in these final two episodes. In the final or in the fifth episode, our
Yeah.
lead detectives have to cover up another murder. They
Mm-hmm.
instruct Pryor to get rid of the evidence of his patricide,
Yes.
and it's
And his
this.
father's homicide.
Yes, yes. There's these terrible grisly murders, and it's just this cycle. It's repeating
Mm-hmm.
itself. It's repeating,
Yeah.
and these scenes they definitely echo some of the events from season one. Too.
Mm-hmm.
The scene that comes to mind specifically for me is the compound shootout.
Yeah.
So for people that don't really remember, Marty and Russ, they find this compound where their suspects are, and
It's like a drug lab in the woods.
yeah, it's a drug lab basically, and they're able to like subdue one of the suspects, and then Marty goes to like check out the rest of the facility. He finds some captive women that are being trafficked, like human trafficking victims. So he comes back out. He executes the suspect out of rage, and then
Yeah.
the second suspect flees on foot and dies. Because he just runs into one of his own trip mines or something like that.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
booby trapped. It's booby
Right,
trapped as
right.
shit.
Well, and then I remember that scene was it's such a good scene because like Rust takes a beat, like Marty executes that guy. Rust takes a beat and he's like, "We got to make this look right," and he just starts like shooting at the bushes. Remember, so it looks like they were getting shot at.
Yeah.
And then they
Put the
come up with
evidence where
this.
you can.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is one of those things where I'm like, that's really fucked up. That's not okay. But at the time, I didn't really have that perspective yet. And I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, this guy probably sucks. It's fine that Marty killed him.
Yeah, right. Like, we have no sympathy for the victims
Yeah.
because they're terrible people. But the way that these detectives are manipulating the truth is objectively horrible.
Yes.
Because, they make it look like a shootout, and then it frames them as heroes within their community. Like, they come back into the police station, everyone's applauding them. They're just like, wow, you solved your case finally, and you got the guys. But at the same time, it's like, they benefited from the event, and they got a temporary conclusion to the case, which they then have to reopen later on because they realize,
maybe because they killed a key witness who might have known something.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly.
Which is what I was thinking of when Navarro like almost kills God, what's his name? The main guy they were looking for, with the beard and the long hair.
I know the guy you're talking about, but I can't remember his name.
Clark. His name was Raymond Clark. Yeah, she's like, I'm like, hey, don't kill him. He's the only guy who knows what's going on. Like, he's the only one. You cannot kill him. Stop it.
Exactly. Don't do anything there.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, in that first season, they're kind of they benefit from the end of that series of events, but they're still kind of driven by finding the real truth of the matter, or at least Rust is, and he just kind of goes down this rabbit hole, which works in their favor later on, but the emotional stuff is never really fully resolved. I would say until the end of the show, obviously.
Yes.
But this whole manipulation of the truth, it's just fascinating to me how the show brings us up, and how we're seeing it here in season 4 especially, and how they play with the presentation of the truth and how the characters manipulate it in their favor.
Yep.
It's just fascinating to me, and I think it highlights complexities within our own characters, the way the truth can be viewed subjectively sometimes, and not to get on the ACAB soapbox for too long here in this episode, because we've done that so many times before on this podcast. Yeah, but
we have.
These scenes, they definitely showcase how people in positions of power and authority will do practically anything in their power to cover up wrongdoings, cover up their mistakes, so they can continue to wield their power. They're afraid of consequences, rightfully so, but they shouldn't have this kind of power to be able to manipulate things in their favor.
And that's not unique to the cop characters in this season either. Like the mine is covering up Annie K's murder. The scientist killed her and got rid of the evidence. Like everybody's implicated in who has power. Everyone who has power is implicated in this wrongdoing for sure. Yes. But yeah, let's talk about season 1 callbacks a little bit. We got a couple that I didn't mind, and then one that I was annoyed by. The like name dropping Rust's dad, totally fine. Don't care. That's totally cool. Fine. Same with dropping the Tuttle name, which is the preacher and the governor from season 1.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And then the spiral was like a little weird. How did you feel about the spiral being included so prominently in this one?
I mean, I like it enough. It's one of those elements that's never fully explained, which I'm fine with. I thought it's kind of cool to see that callback there, and it kind of makes it implies there's some interconnections, beyond our comprehension between these cases.
But it does end up just being like the little thing. Remember, they put it on the rock to mark places not to step because the ice is too thin.
Right, yeah.
And so it's like, it just felt like a red herring to use our knowledge of the series to like misdirect us, which was fine. But it's like, Well, if it wasn't going to be anything and you weren't directly connecting it to season 1, which I'm glad they didn't, it's like maybe just make a new symbol that looks creepy. Like have a different one. It doesn't have to be the same one.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be a spiral, but yeah, it was cool. I also did like how Liz was being interviewed at the end of the series or in the final episode. It did kind of echo the consistent interviews throughout the first season. Like I think for the first 4 episodes of season 1, they're just being interviewed, and it's juxtaposed between current time and past time, all that stuff.
Yeah, which I think was a really awesome part of season 1. The one that I found really annoying was the direct speaking of the words "time is a flat circle" in the finale, because I'm like, this season did not feel like it's about that. Or about that like element of nihilism that Rust has. That felt like a very Rust Cole thing to say, and I don't know why this guy said it here. I didn't really like it. It just felt like a cheap callback for callback's sake. How did you feel similarly, or did you like it?
I kind of liked it, but I get what you're saying too. Because I agree, that is such a Rust Cole thing to say. If time is a flat circle, that's like something you come up when you're tripping acid. That's like how Rust was all the time. He was just tripping,
Yeah.
So I agree. It did feel a little out of context. I think they could have just even tweaked the line a little bit and just said time is a circle. It doesn't need to be flat. You could just say time is a circle, and I think it would have had a very similar effect without feeling so out of place.
Or just convey the idea without saying the word. Like you can say like all of like the lines leading up to it were fine. It was like all of this has happened before and it will happen again, and like I guess there are elements of that with them covering up the murders and stuff like that, but it's just like I just didn't like the line specifically being used. It just took me out of it at a point in the drama where I don't want to be taken out of it. Like this is the climactic sequence of your show. Don't like pull me out with a meta comment like that will remind me of season 1. I thought it was just distracting for me.
I'd get that, yeah. Well, good enough season 1 callbacks, I suppose.
Yep.
All in all, not too many, and that's I think fine.
They were understated enough to where they didn't bother me. I would have been really fucking annoyed if like Woody Harrelson showed up in episode 5 or something. It's like, I'm Detective Martin Hart. I have some consulting I can give you. Like that shit would have bothered me. They didn't do anything like that, so it's fine in my book. Everything was just little minor things that didn't get in the way, in my opinion.
Yeah. And what I do like about True Detective, especially this season, was that not everything was fully explained. I don't need everything to be wrapped up with a nice bow. I think the finale kind of went a little overboard at points of revealing a lot in quick succession. But again, it didn't touch on everything. Like there's even moments where they were like, what happened? Like Navarro asked the women in the village, like, so what's the deal with the tongue? Like, where did that come from? And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so we never get an explanation for that. I have no idea why all the caribou jumped off the cliff at the start of the season. There's this overlap between the supernatural world and the physical world that keeps coming into play where it's like, okay, you seem like you're in a very spiritual place here, walking out onto the ice. And then all of a sudden you're back in reality, like you disappear and then you come back. It's a little confusing, but I don't need everything to be explained to me. I think it's better that way when there's still some mystery at the end of the case.
Yep. And I like that too. And I'm kind of torn on if I wanted a better explanation of what is calling to Navarro and her sister and what this thing is. If it's like, am I meant to believe it's supernatural, or am I meant to believe it's like some genetic condition that they inherit that gives them like auditory and visual hallucinations or something like that? I don't know, but I'm okay not knowing that. And Navarro has a pretty ambiguous ending. It kind of hints that she kills herself by disappearing out into the ice, and I don't know how I feel about that, and how like. Hopefully it's framed if that's what they were going for, because that's do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, I think the final shot Like, yeah, she does go out onto the ice, but then the final shot is Liz on her porch, and
Yes.
then Navarro steps up in that shot
Yes.
too. So,
But I don't know if that shot is meant to be literal or metaphorical.
yeah, exactly.
Because you also have like a piece of the wall is separating where Liz is sitting from where Navarro is standing, so that could be like showing one is in life and one is in death. If it is meant to be a suicide, I don't think that's a responsible way to valorize that. I think it almost feels like they're doing that. If that wasn't the intention and she hasn't committed suicide, I take that back. Never mind. But it made it seem like, oh, she like very nobly walked into the ice and died, and it's like, don't say that. But it was a little weird. I would have liked a little bit more clarity on exactly what is going on. Like, it was just because of the possibility of it being like valorizing suicide. I'm like, that's irresponsible.
Yeah, I choose. I get where you're coming from. I choose to believe that she's just off the grid now, and she's just living wherever she wants, going wherever she wants, and she just kind of will visit Liz from time to time. That's my read, but yeah, I completely understand what you mean.
Yeah, and I'm totally happy with that being the ending for her as well.
Yeah,
like just going off the grid, living in the woods.
Yeah, that's my headcanon, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, but overall, I was positive on this. Like there was some dialogue delivery that didn't always click for me, and the story didn't always go the direction I was hoping it would, or whatever. But I had a good time watching it every week. It was nice to have a True Detective back on my TV. So, any final True Detective thoughts?
I'd say if you like true crime or you like crime thriller dramas, I think this is one to check out for sure. Like, I definitely put this on your radar, and I definitely recommend it. Positive on it overall. I'll echo most of what you're saying there, Dylan. But yeah, why don't we transition to the final segment of our show where we talk about other stuff that we've been exploring, reading, watching, playing, doing. Dylan, what have you been up to lately?
Quite a bit. So, just carrying on from things I've already been doing, continuing to read the Cryptonomicon, Cyberpunk Replay, and finished Neon Genesis Evangelion. Great show and great movie. I do not like the way they do sex stuff in that show. It's very pervy, and it gets really fucking gross at the end. Otherwise, an amazing show. Yeah, it's really... I don't know. So many animes sexualize underage characters to a horrifying degree, but this one did it a lot, and I didn't like that. But otherwise, the show is really good. I'm still not sure how I feel about the ending show or movie version, but I'm gonna sit on it more. And I don't think it's meant to be digested like immediately. It sits with you. But really interesting stuff. I would say our friends also introduced me to both Centaur World and YOLO. YOLO is fucking absurd. It is so strange. You would love it. You should watch it. All the episodes are like 10 minutes long, and then Centaur World seems like a fun, weird cartoon show so far.
Cool.
I also in the spirit to start playing Helldivers 2, which I've started doing, and it's a lot of fun. I watched Starship Troopers for the first time. Great movie, great satire. If you, as an audience member, are watching that movie and you don't think it's satire about fascism, which someone on the timeline did not think it was a satire poking fun at fascism because the characters were too hot, was his reasoning. If you think that, you're dumbass. Like, I'm sorry. The first real scene of the movie is in their high school classroom. Michael Ironside, their teacher, is telling them about the glorious overthrow of a failing democracy by the veterans who installed a military dictatorship. Like, if you watch that and you don't understand what the movie is trying to tell you, oh no. Oh, bad.
You might be a little bit part of the problem.
You might be a fascist. Also, Meow Wolf.
Yes. Wolf.
Like
Convergence Station in Denver.
Convergence Station in Denver. Yes. So how would you describe it? It's like an interactive installation art thing.
Yes, it's experiential art installations. They're incredibly creative. It's like you're being transported to different worlds, different dimensions. Like Convergence Station, the whole point is just like it's this convergence of different like realities of different dimensions and stuff like that. And so that's the whole gimmick. You're just exploring these different worlds. Like there's
like castles
forest
and
section, and then there's
forest castles. The station was kind of like a cyberpunky city block, I thought. But it was really wild. I enjoyed that a lot. It was so cool.
Yeah, if you have a Meow Wolf place near you, definitely check it out. It is worth the time to just go explore. You'll spend like 2 hours there just exploring.
At minimum, cool I feel like you could spend like 5 if you're really getting into the details and like reading all the stuff. Because there are elements of narrative hidden in there apparently that I think like on a revisit would be perfect to pick up on. But well, so audience members, we have a surprise segment now because I saw something truly atrocious last week. I went to see, out of curiosity, Madam Web.
Oh no!
And I'm gonna subject Niles to details about this movie. So,
oh boy,
okay, we're gonna do 2 truths and a lie about things that are in Madam Web. Okay.
Ooh, I like this. Okay.
All right. So, and you're gonna guess which one is the lie.
Yeah.
So, number 1, there is a group of Peruvian Spider-Men who run around in the trees of the Amazon, who paint their skin red and have nets like a webbing on, and they curse evildoers. And okay, so that's thing number 1. Thing number 2.
Okay.
The villain dies by being crushed by a Pepsi sign.
Okay.
And thing number 3, Madam Web loses both her eyesight and becomes paralyzed because she takes a firework directly to the face. Take your guess.
Oh my god, how am I supposed to guess? These are all so absurd. I've only seen the trailer. I haven't seen anything else for it. I've just seen terrible reviews online, so I think the first one is true, just based on the trailer. So I'm going to say the second one, that the villain was killed by the Pepsi sign.
Okay, so the lie was that one of those was a lie. All 3 of those things happen in the movie.
Damn you got me.
So yes, baffling film. And
wow.
Like, I don't know what Sony Pictures malfunction is, because there are talented people who were involved in this movie, and it's clearly only being made so Sony can retain the rights to the Spider-Man adjacent characters that they have, right? This is the first of this series I have seen. I have not seen Morbius. I have not seen either Venom movie. And I do not intend to. They look quite bad. I'm not interested. This was bad, but it was very fun. Because she gets that movie where Nicolas Cage can see 2 minutes into the future powers.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. The villain, who is like evil Spider-Man who kills Madam Web's mom in the Amazon while she's pregnant to steal a spider from her, 95% of his lines are ADR'd. Like, you don't get to see his performance as an actor because everything is dubbed.
That's weird. What the fuck?
Yeah. And let's see. So what else? Oh, and then and he uses the NSA surveillance software in the aftermath of 9/11 to track down 3 teenage girls who in the future will become Spider Women, who are going to kick him out of his apartment, like physically kick him out of the window, like Watchmen style. And so that's that's the plot of the movie. Is he doesn't want
he doesn't want to prevent his own death?
Yeah. That's it. So he sleeps with someone in the NSA and then threatens to murder her, or does. He if he touches people, they get poisoned and die. And then he gets the NSA surveillance software. And then he's like, I have to find these girls because they're going to kill me one day. If you're wondering, do you see the Spider Women ever do anything? No. They only appear in costume in dream sequences of the future. And then and
Oh, that's boring.
They run into, so Madam Web is a paramedic who and she's paramedic partners with Uncle Ben, played by Adam Scott. Uncle Ben is in this, and Mary Parker, his sister, is pregnant with little Peter Parker. At the baby shower, Madam Web starts talking about how her mom died in childbirth, which everyone is
super
like,
fitting.
Yeah.
Great conversation.
And let's see what else is at the end, Madam Web is able to astral project multiple times and pick up all of her friends, all of her little friends, so they don't fall. And then the Pepsi sign falls on the villain, and crushes him for some reason. I don't know. It's crazy.
That sounds like the most chaotic mess of a movie ever.
Oh, and also, so you know how movies, a lot of times there will be a character who knew the main character's parents, right? And they meet them at some point in the movie, and that character imparts some wisdom on them, and some reference to who their parents were. So that kind of happens, except the guy in question is one of the Peruvian Spider-Men, and he didn't know her mom. He delivered Madam Web as a baby as her mom was dying. They met one time. And they have this whole conversation later in the movie when Madam Web is so the evil Spider-Man is chasing all the girls, right? He's found them twice in a night already. And after this happens, Madam Web is like, okay, I have to go to Peru for a week. And she drops them off with Ben Parker and leaves them to go to Peru. The guy trying to kill them has found them twice in a night. She leaves them for a week.
Yeah,
to go to Peru.
Why doesn't she bring them with her? Why do they have to stay? God. I'm so confused.
Yeah. So that. Oh, and so in this scene where she's talking to the old guy who didn't know her mom but delivered her as a baby, it turns out that her mom was pregnant in the Amazon researching spiders, because Madam Web was going to be born with a disease where she wouldn't be able to walk or something, and she's like, "But I can walk. Oh my God, you were trying to save me, and then you got bit by the spider, so it cured my problems." And this conflict of resentment for her mother at abandoning her by dying in the Amazon, it is being introduced for the first time at this moment in the film. So conflict.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and just a truly wonderful experience. Everybody was laughing, having a good time. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I might need to
mentioning.
watch that movie just for the laughs.
I don't know if it's worthy of that, but she does end the movie looking out of a vaguely web-shaped window, now in a wheelchair with some really big sunglasses on, because apparently that's what comic book Madam Web is kind of like. And then that's about it. That's all I got about God. Madam Web.
Well, that's a mess.
Chaos. Absolute fucking chaos of a movie.
Thank you for braving the weather and going to watch this movie for us so you could report
You're welcome.
back. Now everyone knows not to go see this movie.
Yeah, okay, yeah, genuinely, there's a lot of good stuff out right now. Go see something else.
Yeah, see something better than Madam Web.
Dune will be coming out in a matter of days by the time you all are able to listen to this episode. We're seeing it today. Go watch Dune.
Yeah, Dune will be worth it.
Yeah. All right, what about you? What have you been watching?
Yeah, it's quite the list, Dylan. Been working through some new stuff. We've been watching Love on the Spectrum on occasion here. So we started the American show and the Australian show. They got a few different shows across the world. And it is literally just about people on the spectrum who are just trying to find love, trying to find a romantic partner, and it is very heartwarming. It's sweet. It's like yeah. You'll be happy when you're watching this show, and you'll cry a little bit too because you're like, this is so sweet. They just
That's great.
it's like yeah, my I can't remember who said it to me, but they put it in a really good way of just like the show is literally just a dating show where everyone's on truth serum. They can't tell a lie. So,
Yeah.
everyone's incredibly truthful and straightforward and honest. And it's like, okay, this is refreshing. I like it a lot.
That's awesome.
I also started Scavenger's Reign.
Ooh, I need to watch that still.
Yeah, the animated show on Max. It's a show where it's a sci-fi show where this crew just basically get marooned on a planet, and it's just their tales of like trying to get back together, or trying to get off the planet, and it's fascinating. I think the best part about it is just the creature design, the aliens, like the life forms on this planet. They're just unlike anything I've seen before.
Okay, cool.
I think when we think of aliens, we're so quick to think about humanoid looking things that we're comfortable with, things that we know from our world. And this show really just kind of pushed the boundaries, I think, on that creative spectrum of what alien life could look like. So that part's the most fascinating to me, but the characters are also great too.
And the animation in general and the art style looks so incredible from the pictures I've seen. I'm gonna watch it.
It's super cool. Yeah, it's really neat, and it's just beautiful. And the episodes are like bite size, like 20 minutes, so you can breeze through them really quick. And more recently, we also watched Clue, 1985 movie.
That's a Tim Curry one.
Yeah, with Tim Curry, and it's just like a whole cast of characters. You got your Colonel Mustard, like all these kinds of pseudonyms from the board game Clue, and it's really cool. We watched the I think if you stream any version today, it will include all the different endings that you could see at the end. Because when it was originally released, they it would really depend on which theater you went to. You would get a different ending to the movie. So you would it would be like a game of Clue. You'd be like, oh, it was. Can you believe that it was Colonel Mustard? It's like, wait, no, it wasn't Colonel Mustard. It was what's her face. So we got to see all the different endings, which were just fascinating. But the movie ends. God, one of the lines is just so funny. This guy's just like, he just says, "I'm gonna go sleep with my wife," and that's the end of the movie. That was the last line. What the fuck?
Oh my god!
But it's a fun movie. You will not figure out who did it when you're watching the movie, but
well, it
that's
could
okay.
be. It could be any of them.
I know. I'm like, I'll let Tim Curry explain it at the end.
Yeah. Awesome.
But it's fun. It's a good one to watch. I'd recommend that one.
Yeah, I will check it out. But that is that's gonna do it for us for today. We will have a new episode out next week for Dune Part 2. Very excited for that. And then maybe Avatar: The Last Airbender after that if we feel like it. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching or listening. Keep an eye out for our Dune episode next week. You'll be able to find that on YouTube at Play Pause Rewind on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. All that's linked down below. Niles, where can people find you online in the interim?
On Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. What about you, Dylan? Where can people follow you online?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and like I just said, you can find us both here at Play Pause Rewind and Play Pause Rewind Videos, both on YouTube and on your podcast platform of choice. And tell your friends, tell your family about the show. Give us a like or a 5-star review or whatever you want to do. And stay safe until next week, and then we'll talk about some deserts and people.
Dune. It's going to be great.
Fear is the mind killer. Have a good week, everybody. Goodbye.
See ya. Bye.